Welcome back to Utter Punts. I'm your host Olly, joined as ever by the Brummie Viking Dave and the Draft Connoisseur Jim. Welcome to our official 2024 Utter Punts mock draft. We are 2 days out from the draft. What we're going to be doing is picking players as if how we would do it, basically. So not what we think the teams are going to do, but what we would do in this situation. We have to do what we think would be best for each team. So one of us has the Packers, Jim has the Packers. So if he didn't like the Packers, he can't just say, I'm going to trade down to round 7. That's not how it works.
I've got the Ravens pick, man. Come on.
So we have to do based on what we think is best for the team. We have not been told, we have not discussed with each other who's picking what. We don't know yet. So we're going to see how the process goes like it would in the real draft. So, gents, without further ado, shall we get into it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Although I am half sold on the idea of selling the Ravens out just to annoy Dan, but
They're not picking till later, so we'll see how it goes. If I get the players that I want with my other teams, then the Ravens are toast, to be honest, so it's fine.
Well, I'm taking this seriously, boys. I've got the blazer on and everything. I'm feeling very general manager.
You have turned up as a GM. I'm probably declaring my interest.
Dave's turned up as a coach.
I'm 19 minutes out of finishing work, so I have turned up as I come. So
as the draft connoisseur, Jim. That's all we need.
Exactly it. I don't need any more than that, mate.
No one will guess the job that you have, my friend. You are.
No, they really won't.
Let's go. Right, let's go. Are we sharing? Should we share it?
Share it.
Mm-hmm. Who are we using for this? We should give them some credit, right?
So we're using the Pro Football Network mock draft site. It offers a pretty good functionality, free trades. So yeah, pretty happy with it, to be fair. That'll be the one we're using.
If anyone wants to use it to predict their own drafts before the draft starts in a couple of days, then that's the website to go to.
Well,
Indeed.
It's one-off. It's one you don't have to pay for, and it is pretty damn good. So,
yeah,
Indeed.
Free is better. Yeah. Anyway, let's go.
So the order. Let's just explain that. We're doing a snake draft order. So Jim will be going first. I'll be going second. Dave will be going third, and then his snakes on from there. Dave gets the next pick, etc. You'll catch up with the order.
You'll get it.
Yeah,
if you played fantasy football, you know the score.
We have a responsibility to defend the value of the picks as well. Just reinforce that. We know what the value of the third overall pick is in comparison to number 7. We have to try to uphold the actual commodity that we are picking.
Yeah, and we've got a rough idea of the trade chart values as well, and how much moving up and moving down is going to cost. There might be a little disparity here or there, but we're not looking at trading number 1 for number 7 straight up. So we're trying to keep it all on the up and up here on Utter Punts.
We hold the picks, not the teams. So if there is a trade up and down, we wouldn't follow that team. We just stick with the pick we have.
That's it.
Fine.
Right. I say we get into it. Jim, you're up first.
Yeah. Okay, so with the number 1 overall selection in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback, University of Southern California. I've covered this to death on previous podcasts, so haven't got much to add. We don't all agree that he's the top quarterback. I don't think we actually all think he's the top quarterback. Like we said, I just can't get away from the media coverage, and there must be something we're not seeing here. I did read an article today that the Bears are now considering JJ McCarthy. That feels like a smoke screen probably generated by the NFL to actually try and put some intrigue into this first overall pick. But I think since this draft has come about, the number 1 pick has pretty much been locked in. Especially since Justin Fields was traded from the Bears. So, yeah, number 1 overall, Caleb Williams.
Right. So, with the 2nd overall pick, the Washington Commanders select quarterback LSU, Jaden Daniels. I think this is it's what I'd do if I had the number 2 pick, but I also think it's the most likely option of what's going to happen. I think he suits their scheme. They desperately need a quarterback. They're going to pick one here. They're not going to be trading down. That's what I'd do. So Jaden Daniels at number 2.
I agree with that pick. I agree with the premise of the pick. I'm a little bit concerned he doesn't want to play for the Commanders. Who would is a fair question. But there's not a lot there. There's not much of an O-line. He's got one receiver and one failed first-round receiver. So it'll be interesting because there's no smoke without fire in this situation. And when a lot of prominent media members like Adam Schefter are reporting that he wasn't happy with his visit to Washington, there's smoke to that. And it depends. I mean, ultimately, he doesn't have a choice, right? So it is what it is. But ultimately, he's the next best prospect. He's been called Lamar 2.0. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, although he is further along as a passer than Lamar was at this point. But overall, you can't really argue with the pick, and I think we're all agreed it will be a quarterback, whether it's Jaden Daniels or not.
Yep. On to Dave.
Yeah, so obviously I'm sitting with the Patriots pick. Does anyone want to trade up? Because we're happy to listen to offers, but
as picking for the Broncos, I'd be interested in wondering how much you're looking for number 3. To be fair,
well, I've already been offered this offseason 2 first-round picks, so I want a minimum of 3 first-round picks plus a second, on account of the fact that I have stated several times that I want this to be a Godfather offer that moves me off the first spot. And I'm happy with the player that I'm going to take in this position. I'm confident that they are a winner and they're going to be successful once I take the time to build a team around them. So, who wants to move up for a quarterback?
No, I've put the phone down on you already for the 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder, so thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, so representing the Vikings, we don't see a quarterback that is worth what you want, which 3 first rounds and a second is too much, so we're not going to be moving up, so you can keep your pick.
I'm happy to listen to a counter offer. I've started at the far end of a negotiation, right?
I'm willing to give this year's first rounder and next year's first rounder and next year's second rounder, but that's about as far as I'm going.
And the Vikings? Or whoever it is you're trading up for, Ollie? It is the Vikings.
It is the Vikings, and we will not be moving up.
Okay, cool. Okay. In which case, I'm going to take JJ McCarthy of Michigan with the 3rd overall pick, the best quarterback left in the draft, I think. Maybe not got the highest ceiling. I'm aware of how people feel about Drake May, but I'm a brand new head coach, brand new GM. I want to make sure that I've got a franchise QB to build around for the future, and I know that the floor I'm going to get with that man is very high indeed. At the very least, I'm going to have a quality leader in the locker room, and I think at quarterback, that attribute is key.
Okay, can't disagree.
That's what I think they should do. It's not what I think they will do.
What do you think they will do?
I think they'll go wide receiver, even though I've seen that they're now talking about staying pat and taking the QB. I think if they do take a QB, they'll probably go Drake May. But for me, I'd be taking JJ McCarthy if he falls to number 3. Happily. I think he's a great player.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Okay, Dave, number 4.
Number 4. So we're with the Cardinals here. Well, Cardinals have got 2 primary needs in this draft. They have got wide receiver and cornerback. Weirdly, I'm going to end up picking for both. At this point, the value proposition is, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. They're widely touted in the build-up to the draft and throughout the draft process as the number 1 wide receiver in the draft until his lack of testing at any point, because he didn't feel he had anything to prove, has led to neighbours getting in on the coverage around it. However, I don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to resist taking a number 1 wide receiver with the pedigree that Marvin Harrison Jr. has. Because Marvin Harrison, one of the greatest of all time in the Hall of Fame, and many believe, including Marvin Harrison Sr., that his son will be better. So I'm going to be taking at number 4, Marvin Harrison Jr. What a player.
Nothing to add on that one. Yeah, top wide. Well, many people think he's the top wide receiver in the draft. I mean, if you're a casual fan and don't watch college football too much, you probably won't know too much about him. He hasn't tested at all in the off season, so he hasn't run a 40. He didn't work out at the combine. So yeah, there's a question mark a little bit that I saw from one NFL personnel today, which was about his willingness to compete. I think that's a valid question. But at the same time, when you've been seen as far and away the number one wide receiver in the draft since probably the start of the college football season and possibly even into last year's college football season, there's not really a lot of comeback for you. So some people are saying Malik Neighbors, and that's purely on his yards after the catch ability. But yeah, I'm with you on this one. Marvin Harrison Jr., solid pick.
Right. So I have the Los Angeles Chargers pick at number 5, and we are willing to listen to trade offers if anyone wants to.
Well, you control both the Chargers and the most likely team to trade up. I do understand that there may be other teams who want to come up at this point.
Yeah, I've got the Raiders and the Broncos under my watch. So again, I mean, it's not going to be the same offer that we offered at number 2 or number 3. It's going to be this year's first round pick and next year's first round pick for number 5, and that stands from both the Broncos and the Raiders. The Raiders are going to chuck in a 4th rounder as well to sweeten the deal because obviously they're one place further back in the draft. But the Broncos are just offering you this year's first and next year's first.
Okay, so we're going to stick in the position. We like the offer, but the Los Angeles Chargers are going to select offensive tackle Joe Alt at number 5. Gone with this because it's a deep wide receiver class, and I did consider taking Malik Neighbors at number 5, but I think Justin Herbert needs protection. Joe Alt from Notre Dame, I think he's the best in this class at that position, and he could provide the protection that Harbaugh wants for Herbert.
Yeah, he's a bit of a unit. Is Joe Alt? I think he allowed a really low pressure rate for Notre Dame last year, and if you actually saw their run game, I think it's the first time in maybe a couple of 3 years that Notre Dame have actually put together a decent run game. So Joe Alt's the most refined run blocker in the class. He's also an above average pass blocker. He's quite young, so he's got ability to grow into that. So yeah, I think from a Chargers needs perspective, that aligns with their needs. I also think you're right with your comment around them needing a wide receiver. With Malik Neighbors sat there on the board, that could be quite hard to pass up. But Joe Alt makes sense from a Harbaugh perspective. He wants to run the ball, and he's shown an aptitude for that while he was playing last year at Notre Dame.
Excellent. Jim, on to you.
So there's a lot of smoke around the number 6 pick for the Giants, and a lot of people are linking them to quarterbacks. There's still one sat there on the board in the number 2 overall prospect on the Draft Football Network's big board, and that's Drake May. And I'm not going to pull the trigger on Drake May for number 6 for the Giants here. The reason for that is they're far too invested in Daniel Jones. They're going to ride or die with Daniel Jones this year is my take. They signed Drew Lock for what good that's going to do them as their backup quarterback. So it's an interesting one. But what I would say is the Giants are absolutely crying out for a high-level wide receiver. And there just so happens to be one that matches up with the value on the big board, and that's Malik Neighbors. We covered his yards after the catchability when we were comparing him to Marvin Harrison Jr. Some draft experts favour Neighbors, some scouts favour Neighbors. I think it's horses for courses in this respect. Harrison's a bigger target, but Neighbors is shiftier. But the Giants, in desperate need of helping out a quarterback who is probably on the hottest seat in the NFL from a quarterback perspective. So at number 6, the New York Giants are going to select Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, Louisiana State University.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd just like to add, I agree that they're not going to take a quarterback. That's my opinion, because I feel like we mentioned this before on the previous video, but if you're going to pay Daniel Jones the contract, you pay him, and then after a year, draft a new quarterback, that's probably a fireable offence as a GM.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well for your future, and Brian Dabble is somewhat linked to Daniel Jones. So it's one of those. I think they've got a ride or die with him, to be honest with you. And I think for Daniel Jones's perspective, it's ride or die because the Giants have got an out on his contract after this season. And if he doesn't perform or he gets benched or whatever happens, then to be honest with you, the Giants are going to clean house. So they'll be picking highly next year. There's a few quarterbacks in the draft for next year. They've got to do the best they can to support what they have, especially with the cap hit associated with it. So it's got to be Neighbors, really.
On to you.
So it's number 7 is me again, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. The 10th.
Yeah. So the Titans. The Titans are an interesting one because there's not a lot of noise from the Titans around being interested in a quarterback, and it seems like they're going to roll with Will Levis.
Would you be interested in a trade at this point?
I will happily listen to offers.
So I've got interest from the Bills wanting to move up.
Ooh.
I want to get ahead of the Falcons and the Bears at 9. Now they're coming in from quite a way back. Have you got the little trade thingy, on this to just work our way through what the offer will be? So it's going to be the Bills.
Just so people know, that's a 21-team gap between the number 7 and the number 28 spot where the Bills are.
Now, the Bills want the 7, and they're offering the 28, 60, the 2025 first, and the 2025 third from Minnesota. Sorry, the one above, the second round pick that they got for Diggs.
The 2 firsts and 2 seconds to move up 21 spots in the first round. That's a pretty good offer, to be honest. I think there's a lot of credence to the Titans needing an offensive tackle. Obviously, Taylor Lewan left the Titans just over a season ago. Don't think they replaced him. Having watched the Titans last year against the Browns, Myles Garrett gave them absolute fits, which he does to a lot of people. But in that situation, they were a bit exposed for not having offensive tackle, a top tier offensive tackle. There is Olu Fashanu available here at number 7. So it's a really difficult one. But I mean, to be honest, for the value associated with that trade, I think you'd probably have to go for it. And and the trade's been accepted, and I would accept that trade as well. So yeah, is it on me to pick now?
I guess it is. I'll tell you what I was trading up for, and you see whether or not you agree with it. The last elite wide receiver, Roman Odunze. I feel that if they left it any later than there, it will be gone within the next 2 picks, most likely to someone moving up into the Chicago spot. So I just want to get ahead of any issues, make sure that I can rebuild part of my wide receiver core. And I'm packaging up the pick that I ultimately got for Diggs as a bonus when I shipped him out. And I want someone who's as hardworking and durable as Odunze appears to be when he's on the field.
It's a big trade up, but I have been reading that some scouts have got Odunze ranked above both Neighbors and Harrison Jr. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Due to intangibles, apparently, which I think that I think that Josh Allen needs that kind of guy who's just gonna make sure that he's putting everything on the field, even when it comes to blocking for him. So,
see, I think you were right to. I think you were right to move up in the draft for Dunze. There was no way he's getting past the Jets at 10, in my opinion.
nope.
I don't think the Bears will be particularly in the market for a wide receiver, and I just think the Falcons.
I feel that they're a potential seller at 9.
I agree.
To someone else who might come in. I even feel that the Falcons might not be in the market for the wide receiver, but I just felt like at this point it was the right thing to do to make sure we got our guy. And like I say, I don't think we would have got up there with just this year's first, next year's first, and the second this year. 60, 28, and a first. I don't think would have done it. But put an extra second in.
So we're going Roma Dunze. I know. I think that's a really good pick. I think the Titans have got really solid value for their number 7 pick there, with a first and a second this year and a first and a second next year. So I don't think there's any issues from a trade value perspective. And I think Dunze will immediately go in to be the number 1 wide receiver at the Bills. I think the rest of the Bills receiving core you could probably find down the local pub on a Friday night or the equivalent of. To be honest with you, they've got absolutely nothing at receiver. So not wanting to waste the year of Josh Allen's development is absolutely key here. So yeah, I agree with it. And Roma Dunn's number 7 to the Buffalo Bills, wide receiver out of Washington.
Wicked. Right. So I have the Falcons at number 8, and we are interested in listening to trade offers, if there are any.
I'll offer a trade as the Raiders,
Okay.
And that is my number 13, and my second rounder for number 8.
Gonna stick then.
Really? With that kind of value? Getting an extra second round? What pick?
This feels a little Vikings biased. It feels like he's waiting
Can you chuck in a 4th as well?
Yeah, I can chuck in a 4th, but I want a 6th back.
Okay. Deal. So,
are you not counter-offering that with a Vikings trade?
Yeah, I mean, like the Viking. I mean, you are the Vikings. It doesn't feel like you're negotiating very well for us, and you know exactly what the other team's offered. So
yeah, bearing in mind you've got full transparency here, you might want to reconsider.
I'm not sure if I need to move up to pick one picking, so I'll stick with that.
Okay, so we're putting the trade through then. So we're going
13 second round and a 4th, and we give a 6th and the number 8 back.
Okay, so we're going Vegas Raiders to the Falcons, and we're going 13 and 44 and 148 for number 8 and 187.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rejected. Okay, so there you go. Undervalue. Ollie was right. There was us having a pop at him for not taking a fair trade. He even sweetened it up, and it went wrong.
Oh, let's just try this straight up then. First, second, and a 4th.
Okay.
And no 6th back.
Can try it.
So 13, 44. I'm going to go 112 for number 8. I hope you were going to accept that. Well, you were, because you were going to give me a 6th back, so I'm not too worried about it.
And you moved up.
So the Raiders,
yeah.
So yeah, you're picking for the Raiders. I was moving up for Drake.
No line, Ollie. Don't take that. You got to do the right thing for the Raiders. What quarterback do you think best suits him?
Well, I agree with Jim. I'd go with Drake May here. He's probably the next best quarterback that's left in the draft. And if they're moving up, then I think they got to go get him. So Drake May,
Okay.
North Carolina, quarterback to the Raiders.
Okay. Cool. Is it me with the Bears now?
It's you with the Bears, Dave. It's you
Nine.
with the Bears.
It's me with the Bears now. Okay, so the Bears have got they've got Montez Sweat playing on the edge. There's none of the elite wide receivers left. It might have been nice to get another weapon for their new QB. There are some O linemen here, but
Would you listen to a trade offer?
I would be willing to listen to a trade offer. Yeah.
Okay, so as the Denver Broncos, I would be willing to offer. I don't think I've got a second round pick though, so this is where I come unstuck. But I've got as the Denver Broncos, I'm offering number 12, my next year's second, and a fourth rounder to move up to number 9.
I think it's possible for me to take that deal, trade back, and still get the player that I'm after. But I don't. I think I want second and third from next year.
But I'm offering you a fourth this year, so it's the same as a third next year.
But I'd rather have, me speaking personally, don't believe in this myth that next year's picks aren't worth as much just because of the urgency. So me speaking personally, I'd rather have a third next year.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, any counter offers on that?
So you're offering. What are you offering? So you're offering.
My first this year and a second and third next year.
Have you got a second and third next year? Let's just check.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
I don't think I traded all my second round picks for eternity for Sean Payton, but I can't be 100%
Have a
sure.
look.
So what we're saying? So we're going Broncos, Denver.
Just to make sure that the trade is viable.
Chicago.
Okay. And what are you thinking, Ollie, bearing in mind I'm Chicago and I hate you?
I'm going 12, second, and third for 9.
Okay, so we'd be interested in doing a trade up as the Vikings from 11 as well.
Oh, okay. So that's a shorter fallback for me. Okay. So
I need
what
to
are you
see what
offering?
we have got. I know we haven't got a second this year. Am I right on that?
We haven't got a second this year.
You haven't got one next year either.
I guess what I'd be happy to do as the Bears is to take to drop back to 11, get 23, and then I'd kick you back a third.
So number 7, so 9 and 75 for 11 and 23.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No. Oh, okay. Well, I'll take the other deal then.
Okay, so Denver, then Chicago. So 12, second, third, and number 9.
Yeah. We need to get in there ahead of those.
It's
sneaky Vikings.
rejected on the system, Dave. So what do you want to do now?
Well, you're gonna have to offer a bit more, aren't you?
I'm not willing to go anymore.
In which case, I'm gonna pick a player that I probably would have taken anyway. I'm gonna take Dallas Turner as the number 1 edge in the draft. He tested phenomenally. I'm not overly sure about him. I quite like Layer 2, and I also quite like Chop.
It's a great name.
Because of the name. Yeah, it's a great name.
I think the concerns with... Go on, sorry, Dave.
But I've got a few concerns with Dallas Turner that the production didn't really match the athletic profile. But at the same time, I do feel like they need another edge because at the moment they've got DeMarcus Walker opposite Montez Sweat, and in an entire season last year, DeMarcus Walker only managed to get 3.5 sacks. So I feel like they need to go with a little bit more threat off the other edge, mainly to throw up Montez Sweat and provide a bit more rotation for DeMarcus Walker, and maybe he can be more effective taking fewer snaps. So yeah, for me, I feel Dallas Turner is going to be the pick here for the Bears for the taking edge.
Yeah, I think he's a bit light from a general weight perspective, but at the same time, he's got an amazing get off, and I think his 40 was in the 4.4 range, which is unheard of for a pass rusher. So
It is
I
not
think,
unheard of. Do you remember last week the player whose name I couldn't quite remember?
oh
I
yeah,
thought it was Nico Smith. It was Nolan Smith, and he ran a 4.39 at 238 pounds.
then I think Dallas Turner's quite a similar sort of build to that. I think I've seen him listed at about 235 to 240, so he's in the same bracket, and I think he ran a 4.42. So there's not much difference there. Obviously, I don't think Nolan Smith really set the world on fire
He
last
got
year.
1 sack and 10 solo tackles, and I think 17 total tackles in the entire season.
So
Now,
yeah,
apparently, he's turning up this year looking a lot more physically NFL ready from what I've been able to make out. But I had a little look because I quite liked him in the draft last year. I worried about his size, which is why I didn't really mind when the Eagles took him. But on paper, they took good picks in that first round last year. So I'm quite happy with one of them has been slow to get off the mark, but I'm sure we will.
okay.
Yeah, and Dallas Turner, I think profiles in a similar way. I don't think that there's the pressure on him to be the number one edge rusher. I think that is Montez Sweat for the Bears. So I feel like he can fit in and around it a little bit more with a little less pressure on him than I
You
think
should
Nico
see a
Smith.
few one-on-ones. You can't double everyone, right? So yeah, it should be interesting for sure, especially with that speed.
Yeah, so
It is.
For Jets, is it still me for the Jets? It is indeed. So they've got two major needs. They've got an offensive tackle and they've got wide receiver needs. Unfortunately, the three best wide receivers in the class have gone off the board. So I'm now in the area of taking a tackle. Now, I think I thought that Fashanu was actually going to be gone at this point, which makes it a little bit more awkward for me. But I think I'm going to stick to the player that I identify for them based on their needs and based on how I feel that their O-line is at the moment. I feel like a major disappointment for the Jets has been their right tackle, Mekhi Becton. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's a behemoth of a man and a hell of an athlete for a guy so big, but it seems to have taken its toll on his body. So I'm going to take Takisi Fuaga from Oregon State. He's on the board there at number 14. It's a little bit early for him according to their board, but he's a right tackle, 6'5", 324 pounds. He's been a career right tackle, but he himself believes he can either play at guard or even left tackle as well. So even if they do manage to get Mekhi Becton up and running properly again, he could potentially switch over and hold down the left tackle spot for them. They've got Elijah Vera Tucker to come back, who's been a bit injured, but he's a standout guard when he's back. So I just feel at this point it's all about building myself some options so I can protect Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going with Fuaga. Talise Fuaga.
I think he's the only pure right tackle on the board, especially in the top sort of 16, 17 picks. So I probably would have gone with Fashanu from Penn State just because of the value. But at the same time, there should be a lot less of an adjustment for Fuaga in the Jets offense. You're right in terms of being an immediate upgrade over Mekhi Becton. So yeah, I think it makes complete sense to me.
Right. So with the number 11 overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings select quarterback Michael Penix Jr. from Washington.
I'm honestly delighted. Apart from JJ
this
McCarthy,
is the one I wanted from the start. It's the only one I have on the board. So, my second option would have been to trade up for him, but I didn't think the trade was worth it. So the quarterback I had at 11 was just Michael Penix.
You can count yourself very lucky that this system rejected the offer from the Broncos, because I was going to take Michael Penix Jr. just to spite you. I didn't really want him. And this was where I was going to...
You know what's hilarious? You were going to trade up, but I wasn't going to take him for the Broncos. I was going to give them the guy that I think is their best fit, and I think their best fit is Bonix.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, Penix Jr., he's had multiple knee injuries, which people have listed as a concern. But I listened to him the other day. He was talking about it. He said, I think it's more of a concern if you've never had to come back from anything like that.
He took my line for him. I've always come back.
I've listened to, we've had multiple shows talking about quarterbacks, and I just think, all the other quarterbacks looking to him as the leader, his arm strength. I know his stock went down a little bit.
Even JJ McCarthy as well. He was one of the ones at the combine who was looking at him with a little bit of awe, which is interesting because
the
I think he's
Vikings
a very
need
good
a
leader
quarterback.
well.
Obviously, that's what they want, and I feel like if they can do it without having to give the farm and get a man like Michael Penix Jr., then it's worth it. So, for me, that's the pick at number 11.
Yeah, I think is we've discussed. I'm not sold on Bo Nix. To be honest, I think he's a system quarterback, which we'll probably come to fairly shortly. Michael Penix Jr. rated number 4 on most people's draft boards in terms of quarterbacks. I think, having said that, I've also seen plenty of media stories that have got Penix Jr. Over Caleb Williams, for example, which I saw earlier today. I know that's Dave's thoughts as well from an eyeball test, and I don't disagree with it, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people dinged him for his performance against Michigan in the college football playoff, but that's just not watching. That's just not watching a body of work. When you look at his body of work for the entire season last year, he was probably the standout quarterback from out of all of the quarterbacks that we've got in this draft. And overall, Penix Jr., I think there's probably the highest floor of the quarterbacks, apart from maybe JJ McCarthy. But I'm not sure he's got the highest ceiling. I think the highest ceiling probably belongs to someone like Drake May. To be honest with you, if you can coach out some of his imperfections. But having said that, the Vikings already have a player on their roster that's quite reminiscent of Drake May in a lot of respects in Sam Darnold. So I think variety is probably a good call here. I think Penix Jr. should be ready to start fairly quickly with what the Vikings have around him already. So yeah, I can see why that, and it makes sense from a pick perspective for me.
Back to you, Jim.
So, yeah, I mean, the Denver Broncos have just traded for the mighty Zach Wilson from the New York Jets and have done a 6th and 7th round pick swap for him. So they're obviously hugely invested in him. So on that basis, we are going to go and draft another quarterback because I still don't think they've got a starting quarterback on their roster. And we're going to take the last of the big 5. And that is going to be Bo Nix, as we've just mentioned. He's number 33 on Pro Football Network, big board, which doesn't surprise me. He'd be lower on mine. But having said that, Sean Payton has got a lot of sway in that Broncos head office. I think, what's the ex-Vikings chap that's there now? Who's the general manager? What's he called?
George Patton.
George Patton. I think he's already had people. I think that the ownership traded for Russell Wilson. I think Sean Payton's going to pick the quarterback in this instance. So I think Patton's going to be out of a job by the end of the season. I also think Sean Payton could well be out of a job by the end of the season.
That would be hilarious, bearing in mind what they traded for him.
Yeah, but with all the other quarterbacks off the board, no viable starting quarterback on their roster outside of, is it Jarrett Stidham, I think is they're currently pegged to be their starter. I think they've got Ben DiNucci and Zach Wilson, of which, we've seen what Zach Wilson's got, and that's not a lot. I think they're in a difficult situation, and I think they probably got it. They're going to go quarterback here. They may not do, and may accept they're going to bottom out. But that doesn't feel like the Sean Payton way to me. I think he thinks he knows better than everybody.
I think he does too.
So we're going to go Bo Nix at number 12 to the Denver Broncos with a big reach.
Oh, wow. Look how lucky the Falcons are.
And I think I've got the Falcons pick at 13, don't I?
I wonder who you're taking. I think that's a great trade back from them, isn't it?
So you're saying this is you're saying it's a foregone conclusion. I'd be interested to think who do you think I'm going to take?
Well, I understand why you might take Brock Bowers as a tight end target for Kirk Cousins, but quite honestly, they've already got Carl Pitts in that regard. They need a cornerback, so you might well go with the top corner here, but they also, knowing Kirk, you better bloody protect him. And you've got the the number 7 overall player sitting there, I would be astounded if they didn't take the best O-lineman available.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's a little bit of a coin flip. I'm not going to lie. While I see it's a coin flip between Fashanu and Arnold in this situation. I think they've got one corner already. Is it AJ Terrell for the Falcons? I think he's a high level.
I think that's right. He's a good cornerback.
They haven't got a partner for him. But obviously they've picked up some significant draft capital in that trade down with the with the Raiders. So I think we're going to go with positional value, protecting a quarterback who's coming off a torn Achilles, and it's going to be Olu. I can't say the rest. Fashanu and
Olumoyiwaya.
Okay, good effort. I think it's wrong, but good effort.
It probably is wrong. I will learn that one. I'll learn a little bit.
We'll see how Roger Goodell does with it on Thursday night.
Better than I did just. Yeah, that's cool. That works. Okay, so now we're at the Saints.
The Saints.
With their wonderful
Saints desperately needed a tackle, and you got one off my board, definitely, that I would have taken. So the Saints are going to go with tackle Troy Fatanu at number 15. You know, it is their main positional need. I don't think trading down would particularly help them. Derek Carr needs that protection. They didn't have a particularly great year last year, especially like the Falcons. Now they've got Kirk, so they're meant to be better. The Buccaneers re-signed Baker. They need to protect their quarterback if they think Derek Carr's their man, so we're going to go with Troy Fatanu here. And he's quick. He can adapt to left tackle or left guard, depending on where the coach wants to play him. So that's who we're going with.
Makes sense to me. I think you probably would have. I probably would have considered Brock Bowers here, just to help Derek Carr out. To be honest with you, I don't think the Saints are a particularly strong team overall. They've obviously had no money to really spend, being hugely over the cap due to past issues with their free agent signings and backloading contracts. So they weren't able to fill a lot of holes. And another Sean Payton special. So there's all of that there. I probably would have considered Brock Bowers here at number 14. But I think the next team on the list is probably going to be fairly delighted that he's still sitting there. And if they're not, then the teams immediately after them are definitely going to be delighted he's still sitting there, the 9th overall player on their board.
So I'll be honest, I didn't plan for Brock Bowers to still be here. I was looking at wide receivers and cornerbacks for the Colts because of the value proposition for them. But their tight end depth chart was Mo Alley-Cox, solid. Kyle Granson.
Who?
Yeah. Kyle Granson and Will Mallory. They apparently only have got 3 tight ends on their roster right now. So it's a major area of need, and the best tight end in the draft has fallen to them. I think from a positional value perspective, paying a tight end at 15 is far more preferable to paying them in the top 5 or top 10. So I'm more than happy to snap up Brock Bowers as a brand new target for Richardson on his return.
Solid pick with Brock Bowers. Seems to be a gulf in the tight end quality in this draft. Brock Bowers, the only person that really gets mentioned in the first or second round sort of talk. Having seen him play for Georgia last year, he really can be a game breaking tight end. Reminds me quite a lot of George Kittle in the way that he plays. Something to help out a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson. They've obviously got Pittman Jr. On the outside, and they've got Jonathan Taylor as their running back. So I think that the Colts will be fielding a far more complete offense than they have over the last
2 tight end sets, splitting them in, rotating them in.
It could open up their run game hugely as well. And with Taylor being 1 year removed from, what was it, a 1,500-yard season or whatever, and then paying him $15 million a year, they've got to be keen to get him back to his best. So I think that this pick will help that, and it will help the offense overall as well hugely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
I've also got the Seahawks, who've got 2 major needs. Now, the problem is they really need a centre in this draft. the best centre, though, is rated by PFF at number 27 overall. There's just not the value for him at this point. So I would probably be hoping to tempt someone to trade up. But I also don't think there's that many players left on the board in front of me there that might cause people to come rushing up. Maybe Leighton, maybe Arnold as a top corner there. But there's no one who I think people are going to be looking to trade up for unless they're desperate for a defensive tackle. So is there anyone who wants a high-quality defensive tackle wants to come up? Because I think we're getting into the area where there's going to be a bit of a run on that kind of player.
There's nothing. I mean, my next picks are the Bengals and the Rams, and I think the Rams have got an obvious need for a defensive tackle following the retirement of Aaron Donald. But to be honest, I'm going to sit and pick and see what falls to me. This is the first time I've had a first rounder in about the last 4 or 5 years as Les Snead as the GM of the Rams. So for me, the value's not there. I'm not willing to give up the draft capital to move up, and I'll just see what's there when I get there, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I'm not going to knock it. In which case, I will. Unless, Ali, you've not got any interest in moving up either.
No, I mean,
I'm assuming.
Considered it, but I don't think we have the capital for it to make sense. We'll see what falls to us.
Okay, so in which case, it is annoying to see that my backup option, who I figured was the right value, even though he's currently a tackle, Troy Fatanu, I was hoping would still be here for these guys at this point. He can play guard or centre, according to him. He's predominantly been a tackle, but he's the kind of player who can play anywhere across an O-line. So he would have been able to fill the need of a right level of value. As it is, I'm going to make a reach because I don't think he's going to be here by the time I can pick again. I'm going to go with centre Jackson, Powers, Johnson, and you're going to have to switch to centres in order to find him. And they haven't even got him rated as their top centre, but Pro Football Focus do, and I like what I see from him. He looks like a Garrett Bradbury with the ability to actually hold the point of attack. So I think he should be all right.
Don't know much about him. I know the Oregon offense is fairly high-powered and is predicated on operating at pace and has been since the Chip Kelly days.
Excellent zone blocker. Excellent.
Yeah, and that'll fit right into the Seahawks' overall offensive vision. They've obviously got their receivers sorted on the outside. They've got Geno Smith at quarterback, who's a middle-of-the-road quarterback. So buying time for that quarterback in the pocket's the key piece. I'm not surprised it's interior offensive line. I think there's probably sexier picks available still on the board. I think they probably would consider a corner. I think they'd probably consider an edge rusher. I think they'd probably even consider one of the top tackles remaining in Mims and Latham. But completely understandable pick. It's too early for Jackson Powers Johnson. But unless you were going to take a quasi discount offer, like just start getting a second to drop down sort of 15 spots, then I don't think is in the realms of possibility. And I think it's a solid pick.
So
yeah,
I believe I have the Jaguars. Yeah, so
Jaguars.
With the 17th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to pick cornerback from Alabama, Terrion Arnold. The secondary's a desperate need for the Jags from what I've seen, especially towards the end of last season. You know, I was looking at him earlier. They say he's a cover corner who expertly positions himself. You know, he's probably the best cornerback in the draft, although that may be arguable. I can see picking Quinion Mitchell here as well, but we're going to go with Arnold for the Jags at 17.
I like the positional pick for the Jaguars. I just don't like the prospect. I've watched Terrion Arnold over the last 2 years, and he's a very streaky player. He got burned against Texas last year quite significantly. He's my number 3 corner on the board overall. I've got Quinion Mitchell and Khaled McKinstry both ranked ahead of him. I know Khaled's got a few injury concerns. But
he's got a great name.
Plus there's that. Terrion Arnold, for me, looks a bit of I'm not sure on the man coverage side. I think he looks like a good zone corner. Can break on the ball well. He's got, like you say, he's got good positioning for zone. But man coverage, when I've watched him in man coverage for Alabama against some of the bigger SEC teams in college football, he's been exposed a couple of times. And yes, so I like the positional pick for the Jags, but I'm not sold on Terrion Arnold as a prospect. But again, I don't have to be to pick him, as we proved with Caleb at number 1. So we'll see how it all works out a year. And Bo Nix as well, my number 5 quarterback, that I think about 2 weeks ago I said was not an NFL starting quarterback, which is why I think that Sean Payton's out of a job at the end of the season, and George Patton for that matter. Okay, number 18 is the Cincinnati Bengals, of which I don't really like. So I'm genuinely concentrating.
Put your pitty hat on and do it properly.
Yeah, I might take a punter here. But no, because I've got to be a big boy. I've got my big boy pants on, and I've got to play nice. We're gonna take JC Latham, offensive tackle from Alabama, to complete the Bengals line on this side. He's going to play right tackle in this Bengals offense. Protecting Joe Burrow as it is hugely important. We've discussed it with the Falcons and the protection of Kirk. We've discussed it with Derek Carr and the protection of him. And we can pretty much, replay that message across all of those highly paid quarterbacks where we've drafted an offensive tackle. I think the offensive tackle draft depth is really good, especially in the first round. There's a good 5 or 6 prospects there that have got first round grades on for most draft scouts. Latham, I think, is just a bit more of a finished article than Mims, who's the Georgia offensive tackle, was rated 1 slot higher on this, so it's much of a muchness. But yeah, JC Latham for me, for the Bengals for sure.
Solid.
I'm also picking for the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm looking at my board. I'm looking at the board in front of me, and I'm seeing that there's 2 edge rushers sitting there. There's a corner sitting there. There's 2 defensive tackles sitting there, all in the range that wouldn't be considered a reach. So this is a difficult one. I quite like the defensive tackle depth in this draft. I think there's a few defensive tackles in the second round, like Ruke Ahoro, who played for Clemson. I think there's the chap from Miami that I can't remember his name at the moment, but I think there's some decent depth there. So I'm actually fairly comfortable with taking a defensive tackle later on in the draft. So for me, I'm going to go with value as a primary piece here, and I'm going to take Laitu as a number 13 rated player on the board, edge rusher from UCLA for the Los Angeles Rams. So a local boy. Staying in Los Angeles.
He's got a very nicely developed repertoire. He's not the most athletic from what I've seen of him, but he is someone who seems to actually be a technician. And often they're the ones who transition best when they have got the baseline athleticism, and he's definitely got that. So
I think what we've seen as well, he can kick inside, so he might be able to cover a bit of that Aaron Donald loss on the interior pass rush if necessary. The Rams don't have a huge amount at pass rush at the moment. So I think starting to rebuild that defensive front has to be a priority. You typically value a pass rusher over a defensive tackle in a standard draft, and I think with the value being here on this board, with Laitu being the 13th ranked player versus the next defensive tackle at number 21, I think it has to be Laitu, and yeah, we've locked him in for the Rams at number 19.
So I am number 20 at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they've just got.
Sorry, I'm just mimicking the real draft. I'm just mimicking real draft atmosphere now.
So they've just brought in 2 high-profile names at quarterback, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Russell Wilson's going to be starting. He's going to need some protection, which is an area the Steelers lacked last year. They need a tackle and they need a center. So with the number 20th overall pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers go to select Graham Barton from Duke, tackle. There is a belief that he can play at either the tackle position or the center position, so there's an adaptability from him. He's 6'5", he's massive, he's got consistent technique and good balance. I reckon, I would draft him here for the Steelers.
You know what? An oversized centre for the Steelers. I can see that. I wouldn't have thought that from a positional value perspective, I would probably gone for an outright tackle because I think you've picked him because of his centre ability. So probably would have been Mims for me, but I understand why you've done it based on that need of centre.
I agree with Dave's assessment on this one. My only question mark about is with Graham Barton is, I mean, it's all good being a 6'5" centre potentially. Russell Wilson's 5'11". So is he going to be able to see over his line? Is a genuine question I have.
Great question, to be fair, but they should bend over, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, ultimately, when you get in people pushing you back into the lap of the quarterback, Russell Wilson, he's got good escapability, so I don't think it'll be an issue. I'm being a bit funny, to be honest, and failing miserably. Graham Barton, I completely get it. I don't think it's a huge reach. He's considered the top sort of interior lineman in the draft, I think. The view is he can play any one of the three spots along that line, guard, centre or tackle. I think he'd probably be more of a right tackle to start with. But yeah, they are in need of both tackle and centre, so getting that player that can play both, it just opens up your picks a little bit later on in the draft, so you're not telegraphing things. So I think it's a solid pick, but I'm with Dave, and my pick probably would have been Amarius Mims.
On to you, Dave, with the Dolphins.
Oh, it's the Dolphins. So the Dolphins lost a key component of their defense this year in Christian Wilkins. They also lost a linebacker in Andrew Van Ginkel. So I was kind of having a look at the different options, primarily to offset that loss of Wilkins, because I think that's going to be key. So I wanted someone who was going to be giving pressure up the middle. Now, the problem is, though, and it is kind of a problem, is that someone with a bit of positional value has fallen further than I thought they would. And it's making me second guess whether or not I should be doing that. I'm looking at both Jared Verse and Mitchell at cornerback, because they do have a need of cornerback. So I guess I'm going to ask myself, where do I think these prospects stack? And I honestly think that Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle out of Illinois, whose actual name is Jerzan Newton, and wicked name, great name, my friend. So based on the name value and the fact that he's 6'2", 295 pounds, he's not too far away from being a similar build to Christian Wilkins, who's 6'3" and recently was 3'10". So I can see him maybe putting on a stone or so over the next couple of years as he gets into the NFL conditioning. So I think I'm going to stick with the key need that I've identified there for them, and I'm going to take Johnny Newton of Illinois at 21.
Okay. Well, it's you again, Dave, with the Eagles.
Seahawks are mine.
I don't have anything to add on Johnny Newton. I think it's much of a muchness for who's the top defensive tackle in this draft. Johnny Newton's got good production at Illinois. He's actually called Jerzan Newton, which, as you pointed out, which is a much better name. So I'm not quite sure why he's being referred to as Johnny, but we'll take it.
Yeah, Jerzan is an amazing name.
Yeah,
a first name with an apostrophe in it. Keep that, lad.
Yeah, come on. So I think whoever's picking for the Eagles now has got a very welcome conundrum, I would suggest, because I think the top two needs on the Eagles board are probably matched up with the top two players left on this board, would be my guess. So is it Dave again?
It is. Now, I think that the reason that Edge isn't appearing there is because people forget they've lost a few players this off-season, and their Edge players who they drafted didn't perform that well. So I'm half tempted to go with the highest rated player on the board in terms of Jared Verse for them. But I'm not going to. I'm going to take the top corner on the board because it is such a position of need for them. I'm going to take Mitchell from Toledo. He's a cornerback who has been favoured highly by some analysts, not so highly by others. The cornerbacks in this draft, you seem to get a different top three based on who you're having a look at the research on. When I watch people myself, I enjoy watching this guy play. I feel he gets his head around quite well. So I think that, unfortunately, the Eagles might have got a half-decent cornerback there. Oh, sorry, people.
Yeah, I think Quinion Mitchell's my top corner in this draft class. Like we said, I mean, Arnold's gone off the board first. I think the difference this year with the corners versus over the last few years where we've had top 5 picks at cornerback is that they're somewhat scheme specific. I think Quinion Mitchell will fit the Eagles scheme really well. I think again he's going to be really solid in zone coverage. Like you say, gets his head around nicely. Little bit of a question mark on the makeup speed for Quinion Mitchell. I saw him concede a couple of long touchdowns after getting beat off the line. So that'll be something that the Eagles coaching staff really need to clean up. But ultimately, yeah, he's my top corner in the draft because all corners get beaten at some point. I mean, there's not much between Mitchell and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think as well the Eagles like taking players from big programs. So if it's not Mitchell, it could be Kool-Aid. So yeah, but at the same time, I've got him as my top corner for the reasons outlined, and I think it's a little bit telegraphed from the Eagles' perspective. The only surprise with the pick is that they didn't trade up to get him, because that's obviously a Harry Roseman trait for I think 4 out of the last 5 drafts he's moved up in the first round to go and get his player. And
he's always had a hell of a lot more draft capital to do that.
So
that's true.
It's the Minnesota Vikings again, and I had 3 players on the board here, and surprisingly, all of them are still here. I think after we picked Michael Penix Jr. at 11, our offense is, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's more complete than the other side of the ball. Definitely need some defensive players. So with the 23rd overall pick, I'm going to pick defensive tackle Byron Murphy II from Texas. I know there's some concerns about his height. He's 6'1", so it's in that he's not big enough to be a defensive tackle in the NFL. But that I was just going to say, I think the Vikings have really lacked that explosiveness down the middle of the line in the defense in recent years. It's a big positional need. I also remember, I know he was an undrafted free agent, but a lot of people had concerns about the size of Ivan Pace Jr. when we drafted him last year, when we signed him last year, and he's turned out he had a brilliant first season at middle linebacker. I know it's a different position. So the other players I had were Kool-Aid McKinstry. We do need a cornerback as well. And I had Jared Verse just to partner up with Bernard. But Byron Murphy for me is the number 1 pick I would have there. So yeah, that's my choice.
For me, I love Byron Murphy.
I do too.
I think he's the top defensive tackle in this draft. I think he's an absolute steal. At 23, I think he could go as high as 12, to be honest with you. The concerns about his height are from people that maybe don't watch players like Aaron Donald.
Lowest man wins. Come on.
Yeah, it's all about leverage. Byron Murphy plays with leverage.
Unbelievable.
Huge wingspan. Genuinely love the pick. I don't think the Vikings will have 23. I will caveat that, but if they do, and Byron Murphy's on the board, then Kwesi can take his. I don't know what grade they'd give his Penix. Well, they'd have to give it a B at least for Penix Jr. But the Byron Murphy pick would be an A.
But this is just what I do.
Probably pretty much
universally
best defensive tackle in the draft, most complete. No, I'm just saying. No, yeah, I completely get it. You're playing with the hand you dealt, mate. So no concerns there. I just think, but yeah, if the Vikings manage to come away with a top 4 quarterback, well, ideally a top 3 quarterback, I think, or a top 4 quarterback, including Drake May. I know you didn't pick him and refused the trade up and the Raiders beat you to it. But if you came away with a quarterback and Byron Murphy with 2 first-round picks, then
Yep.
Kwesi should be asking for a contract extension fairly sharpish, I'd suggest.
I'd argue that the only thing that might have been possible would have been a trade back and maybe get him anyway, just because of the lack of value teams seem to be placing on him. But I'd be very happy if the draft turned out like this for the Vikings. I know a lot of Vikings fans wouldn't, but quite honestly, there's a reason why the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl.
Except me.
And that is because Vikings fans don't know what's good. We're late to the party, but don't worry, we'll save you guys. If I don't get irony either, so they're going to think I'm serious. Okay.
It's on to me. On to me, picking for the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm not a Cowboys fan either, so a punter is again under consideration at number 24.
The Vikings would like to offer you a 7th round pick for the Cowboys.
I'm going to be the better man, and I'm going to go 24. With a... Yeah.
Stop it, we haven't got time for nonsense. Come on.
No. So I'm sticking and picking. I'm filling the biggest need on my roster because I didn't sign anybody in free agency. I don't know why that was the case, but they just chose not to. And there happens to be an offensive tackle, a huge mammoth of a man in Amarius Mims staring me in the face. Good value at 24. I think he'll probably be gone by this point in the actual draft. But I'm taking Amarius Mims from the offensive tackle from Georgia, number 24 for the your Dallas Cowboys.
Packers.
Packers are an interesting one. I think they've got a couple of pronounced needs. I think they're still finding their way on offense. They've obviously got Love and Watson as their main wide receiver. Haven't got much at tight end. There's nothing worth taking there. Haven't got much in the slot. Xavier Worthy's a little bit of a reach here, I think. So I think for me, I'm looking at positional value and I'm looking at what's left on the board. Jared Verse is staring me in the face. He's not really a huge need for me in the Packers, having drafted defense a couple of times over the last 3 years. So I'm going to be taking Nate Wiggins No, I'm not actually. I've changed my mind. I just saw Kool-Aid McKinstry still on the board. I'm going to be taking Kool-Aid McKinstry at number 25 for the Green Bay Packers, which, judging by Dave's reaction, he was waiting for that pick to come. So I'm delighted I can deliver the Green Bay Packers my second ranked cornerback this year. And I think apart from the name, a little bit of an injury concern with Kool-Aid. But he's played he's played for Alabama. He's played for Nick Saban, a defensive head coach. Alabama corners have been hit and miss in the NFL. But from what I've seen from him, he's a long corner. He's got good makeup speed. He's quick out of his breaks. So, yeah, Kool-Aid McKinstry, number 25 for the Green Bay Packers.
It's a good pick for them. That's why I'm upset about it. I was waiting for the... I've got the... it's not me next. It's not me next. It's you, Ollie. All right, okay. But yeah, I just didn't want to see Kool-Aid go to the Packers on account of the fact that I like him.
I nearly took Nate Wiggins, and I was filling in my draft card, but and then I looked at the list again and realised that my favourite named player in this draft cycle was still sat there, and was a match from a positional value and an overall board value perspective. So. Yeah, I'm glad I corrected myself because
I'm at number 26 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're going to select edge rusher Jared Verse from Florida State. So if we're looking at it from a non-Vikings perspective, Dave, the Falcons and the Bucs are probably going to be competing for the South Division. Maybe Kirk will be like he was when he came to us, but on that logic. The Buccaneers would like a big, explosive edge rusher who can get into that pocket and pressure Kirk because he tends to fold under that pressure. So, yeah, and they have a big defensive need at the Bucs, so we're going to go with Jared Verse.
Second-rated pass rusher on the board. To pick him up at number 26, I think is really good value. I think he was number 50.
I was going to ask what he'd done wrong because we all left him, but it was just positional need for other teams. And that's how some players do fall, unfortunately. But he's a good player.
What I would say is I think the Ravens would probably start sniffing around Jared Verse if he did start to fall into those mid-20s. I think the Bucks had to would have to beat someone like the Ravens to him if he does fall into that range. Really solid pick or add to a good interior defensive line for the Buccaneers. And it'll make that defense a lot more complete, obviously, with Baker and Mike Evans on offense and Chris Godwin. They've kind of got that sort of locked off on offense. So the Buccaneers make themselves a much more complete team by taking the second-ranked pass rusher second or third-ranked pass rusher on the board. He's honestly my second-ranked.
Sweet.
I like the pick for the Buccaneers.
Back to you, Dave.
Cool. So it's back to the Cardinals. Now the Cardinals have already dealt with one wide receiver need. So I really wanted to deal with either defensive tackle or cornerback for them. There's no one really there with the right value for defensive tackle. But what I would say is, looking at Brian Johnson, the LSU wide receiver, who's a pretty exceptional player, so good in fact that I occasionally call him Michael Thomas Jr. Rather than Brian Thomas Jr. because I'm an idiot. But he kind of does remind me of Michael Thomas Jr. in terms of the fact that he can basically take a slant and turn it into something. He's a good player. So he's sitting there. I could take him and basically take two potentially number one starting wide receivers, but I'm not going to because I basically, when I was looking for the number 15 pick for the Colts, I was writing down some players that I felt were a fit for them, and there's actually the PFF overall number 8 player still available on this board, and it's Cooper DeJean of Iowa, cornerback, who fills a need of theirs. It means that the Colts have come out of this with a wide receiver and a cornerback. But the best thing about Cooper DeJean is he can play outside corner either side or slot corner. So regardless of what you find is the best combination with your secondary, he's someone who can fill those gaps for you. PFF seem to love him. These guys not so much. That's the kind of anomaly you hope for.
I think the issue with Cooper DeJean is a lot of people don't see him as having a defined position. I think you've said like he can play outside corner, inside corner. This site's got him listed as a safety, and that's positional flexibility. Which
he's got the power to play safety. That's the interesting thing about him. For me, he feels like a version. What's the name of that player that the Lions took last year? Who I think they're playing in safety. Who's played well this year? Let me just double check. Pretty sure it begins with B for some reason. But basically, he's another player who, for me, transcends like position in terms of the fact that you can use him as a weapon, but he's also good enough to actually play a certain position as well, and that's kind of special. Brian Branch, that's who I'm thinking of. Who was listed as a defensive back, remember? And he's kind of playing that hybrid role for them and doing it very effectively. It was, I think he might have been up for the Pro Bowl last year playing for them in that position.
I think DeJean's very much in that mould. I think he's better than Brian Branch was when he was coming out last year. Obviously, if he has the same amount of success, then the Cardinals will be very happy. He's a bit of an anomaly in some respects, and positionally, no one's quite sure where his best fit is. But there's obviously an increase in need for slot corners, big slot corners as well to handle tight ends. If he can put, a lot of defenses are running 3 safety looks, and if you start pairing him with, is it Budda Baker at the Cardinals, you start looking at a fairly formidable backfield for them. So I really like the pick. I think it's good value. I think this site has him undervalued. I think PFS probably has him overvalued. I think he could be in consideration for the Eagles pick and or the Eagles trade up in the picks. to be honest. So to get him at number 27, the Cardinals should probably be cartwheeling to the podium to
It's you
submit
again,
that
Dave,
card,
with another.
to be honest.
It is.
This is my last pick, I believe, gentlemen. Am I back for anybody? No, I'm not back for anybody else, am I? Awesome. So, let's get this done then. With the last pick for the Titans, the team that traded all the way back with the Bills, so that the Bills could go up and get a Dunze. Well, the Titans had traded all the way back to 28, and they're about to take a player who isn't even on this board. Can you go to wide receivers for me, please? And there he is. So on this particular website, they've got Xavier Legette rated as the number 51 overall player. I'm going to say something that I might end up getting my egg on my face, but for me, I'll put him up there with the other three. He's an exceptional blocker. He's been a transcendent player. His production in his first couple of years of college football wasn't particularly high. I think something like 90% of his production came last year. He has got the physicality to get away from press coverage. He actually has the ability to run routes. He's not got a particularly mature route tree, but it is there and it can be built upon. And it kind of reminds me of DK Metcalf. So I'm going to break convention of holding with this big board and and I'm not even particularly drafting for team need there. I don't think the value was there to deal with their team need too much. With maybe Chop Robinson at edge, but I think there was a little bit more diverse value later in the draft coming. And I think with Xavier Legette will be a number one wide receiver in an offense which has already got a pretty good wide receiver. Who's the wide receiver they took 2 years ago?
The one that they took with the pick that they got traded for AJ Brown.
Yeah. I was about to give the wrong name. That's why I'm checking myself.
I can't remember. But he's underperformed for 2 years. That's my concern with him.
And that is why I think that if you bring in another physically dominant player and you turn him from being a number one into more of a number two, he's not going to get double covered as much. You might be able to do something there. I think that wide receiver is an underrated need for the Titans. They've been a run-first team for a while. They're switching philosophies. They're going to be looking to make use and try to see whether or not Will Levis is the man for them. I personally just see the need to put weapons around him. And the best thing about Legette, if you pop it off to him in the flat because you're about to get nailed and you just need to hit the check down, he's a guy with the strength, athleticism to take that to the house. So I really think Xavier Legette is an underrated wide receiver in this draft. And because they're the last team I'm representing, I'm going to snap him up for the Tennessee Titans. I feel like I've done both the Bills and the Titans a favour there, to be honest.
If you do say so yourself.
Yeah, I'm very good at this.
The only piece that I would question on this pick is there was still an offensive tackle graded far higher left on the board, and that was probably going to be their pick at number 8. Not number. It's number 7? Sorry. So yeah, I think it's a tough one. You've obviously got Brian Thomas Jr. there. I'm not as high on him as others are.
Nor am I. I think he's a good player, but he's not even in my top 8 wide receivers. There's still some wide receivers that are ahead of him on my particular board that are right there now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, to be honest, the way this board's falling, once we actually welcome the Carolina Panthers to the NFL draft at pick number 33 on night 2, I think they could have their pick of 2 or 3 of the receivers that you're still seeing on the screen at the moment, which will probably make them happy because, again, they've got your local pub team as their wide receiver core, pretty much. And Adam Thielen, a Vikings legend, of course. So there is that.
Thielen basically still played like a number one wide receiver for them last year, but it must have been hard for him. I think he broke 1,000 yards, didn't he? So hats off to you, chap. But he was their offense last year, and you can't have that. You can't have that much pressure on him. But yeah. Love you, Adam.
Ollie,
Keep going,
with the number
Cornerback Nate
29th
Wiggins
overall
from
pick in the
Clemson.
2024 NFL draft, the
I
Detroit
know
Lions
that
select.
Dan Campbell came out and said they were scouting cornerbacks, even though they've added a few in free agency. It's still an area of need in their secondary. I think he's the best cornerback probably left on the board, so we're going to go with Nate Wiggins.
Yeah, my number 4 corner, Nate Wiggins. A little bit burned from Clemson corners in the past. Some of them haven't. A lot of them haven't worked out, and Clemson aren't the powerhouse college program that they were a couple of years ago. Nate Wiggins, he's a quick corner, good long speed. So I think he'll work well in the Lions system. I think the Lions have already got some players that already sit in that. I know they traded for a corner from the Bucks during free agency. I can't remember his name, but he's been a top sort of 10-15 corner. I think he was named to the Pro Bowl a couple of years ago. So I think Nate Wiggins will round out their secondary pretty nicely. And overall, from a positional value, he's right up there with, I think he's number 24 on this board here. But yeah, my number
Back
4
to you,
corner,
Jim, for a team you love.
Good solid pick from the Lions. Baltimore Ravens.
Just a footnote, boys. So the Titans wide receiver core, it's Treylon Burks who's the guy we're thinking of, but they also brought in Calvin Ridley, and we've also got
Well, Goodell's already
It
announced
isn't
it,
very
Dave.
likely
So
that I did make a mistake. I just
Yeah.
really wanted to do it again. No, it's just
There's no takebacks on the NFL draft. Otherwise,
He's already got the Titans cap on. His family are crying. He's
if
on
we
the
could
phone.
actually draft a good one. So
I mean, do you think about it, man? Mate, I'm more than happy with my pick. I just think that would actually be a powerhouse wide receiver core because that's not poor. If Will Levis can't do something with a set like that, including Leggett, he does offer a little bit of something different to those three anyway, so I'm not too fussed with that as a pick.
He might have a sieve for an offensive line, but as long as he can get the ball out in half a second, he should be fine.
Out and Leggett with a run after catch, man, like adds to it. And Hopkins will take anything when he's panicking, falling backwards, and just lobbing it up. So he should be covered. Leggett should look half decent next year, regardless of O-line. Let's do the last two.
Baltimore Ravens pick for me, number 30. So first off, I'm releasing Justin Tucker, and I'm going to replace him with a kicker here. I'm not. I'm going to go typical Ravens with this one and look for value. Interestingly, the top 2 players on this board probably line up with the Ravens' top 2 needs. I think the one need is slightly bigger than the other. I think they're still quite invested in their wide receiver core that they've drafted. Well, he's gone. He walked in free agency and still unsigned. And I know they've drafted 2 wide receivers in the first round in I think the last 4 years or last 3 years.
Flowers is good. I like Flowers.
They've got Flowers, and I can't remember. Is it Perryman or something like that?
You're talking about Bateman, Rashad Bateman.
That's the one, Rashad Bateman. Yeah. So I'm not willing to spend another first-round pick on a wide receiver at this point. I'm going to go typical Ravens and take a player that I think is really good value at number 30. He's the top remaining edge rusher on the board, and that's going to be Chuck Robinson.
He sounds like a Raven.
He does sound like a Raven.
Yeah, he does sound like a Raven. Yeah.
So yeah, we're taking him. I've also got pick 31 for the San Francisco 49ers. I haven't got much to add on Chuck Robinson. Love the name. Plays for Penn State. Honestly, haven't seen too much about him. He's ranked.
Very little worried about his athleticism.
I think there's a bit of questions about his size as well. Yeah. I think he's a little bit on the smaller side. I could be wrong. I could be getting him confused with someone else. But
you've got to let him pin his ears back. And
he's a pure pass rusher.
Yannick Ngakoue is someone I feel kind of like there's an air of him about him. But what I would say about Chop Robinson is he's a very willing defender in the run, comparatively speaking.
And they've got they lost Jadeveon Clowney to free agency to the Panthers as well, so they've got an open spot on their defensive line for a starting pass rusher. So I think Chop Robinson, good positional value, good overall value. Then the highest rated pass rusher left on the board. So the pick is quite, and like we said, I'm not willing to spend another first round pick on a wide receiver prospect, having invested heavily in that over the last few drafts. So yeah, it's got to be Chuck Robinson. Number 31, the San Francisco 49ers. Haven't got a huge amount of needs as it stands. That could change if Deebo Samuel departs. Not Deebo Samuel, the other Brandon Ayuk departs via trade, which is a question mark at the moment. I don't think he's going anywhere. I fully expect him to suit up for the 49ers next year. I expect him to I expect him to be there for a while. I think they may trade Deebo next year if it comes down to it.
So could get a higher return for Deebo and clear more salary cap. So
yeah, so for me, I'm going to take the next need on the 49ers board. They've got an aging left tackle. They haven't got much at right tackle anymore. So we're going to take Tyler Guton, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. A little bit of a zone blocking offensive tackle, which will work well in the Shanahan system. Someone for Christian McCaffrey to run behind. So yeah, overall, the top player at the position left on the board, number 29 overall. Yeah, and he should slot straight in as a starter on the right side of that offensive line.
Nice. Like it. I think it's a good piece of value. Yeah, and it does fit their scheme. So 49ers always
the Kansas City Chiefs, they have two main needs really, which is on the offensive line and wide receiver, but I think they're going to prioritise protecting Mahomes because they've won a Super Bowl with basically no wide receivers last year, and you'd rather not risk an injury to Mahomes, so I'm going to pick tackle.
You don't think we're going to take... before you do it, you don't think we're going to take the value
they're going to take the
number 20 overall player sitting there?
Tackle Jordan Morgan from Arizona. Just like I said, protecting Mahomes, making sure he can do his job, making sure there's no injury danger to him. I considered wide receivers, but all of the best ones have really gone off the board. I don't think it's worth taking one here. So, yeah, that's what I'm going with.
I completely disagree with this pick. And I think, bearing in mind the Chiefs have just extended their entire front office and Andy Reid. They've got their top receiver from last year staring down 8 counts, thanks to his recent indiscretion.
I think that's what you might not be taking into account with the reports today. That it could be going away.
But while they won it with nothing, Rasheed Rice still put up a good, I think, 900 yards or 1,000 yards or whatever it was. For me,
so
this pick would have been Xavier Worthy.
Tyler Guyton
I'd be trying to win
my number one, and then I had Xavier Worthy and Jordan Morgan, but yeah,
you've gone for the tackle. Okay, I just think this is why we're doing it, to create debate, right? And I can understand the logic of wanting to make sure that Mahomes is protected when you've got such an investment in it. I just feel like they've got a massive, massive hole at wide receiver, and I think that gets slaughtered if they didn't fill it. So yeah. But honestly,
I'm looking for that Tyreek Hill element, that Xavier Worthy, that 4.28 40-yard dash speed is what I'm going for.
He was a ridiculously quick player. And they tried to get the Tyreek Hill replacement before Hill had gone in Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman ended up coming back under a bit of a cloud from the Jets last year. For me, I also would have thought that Xavier Worthy with that under 4.3 speed. He broke the record, didn't he? He beat Ross's record. Yeah. He owns it himself. Yeah. So the fastest player ever in combine history. I don't think that could resist that.
Well, I'm sorry in your opinion, but let's see what the Chiefs do.
Damn it, Ollie, you nearly got there. So if the Chiefs do what we said, does that mean that you have to acknowledge it? Because I wouldn't do that.
I stand by it.
Even if the Chiefs do what we said, you should still maintain it.
There's other wide receivers. They can pick them.
Come on. Keen strong.
That is true. And
I trust my head coach, Andy Reid, to know what wide receivers he wants deeper in this class.
Beautiful load of wide receivers, I think.
Anyway, well, that
Okay.
Okay.
I get. I get it. We didn't talk much about your pick because we were too busy panning you for it. So what I would say is, you've picked another obvious need for the Chiefs' offensive line, right tackle. I think I've got him graded as the 6th best offensive tackle in this class. So it's not horrible value. I think he could go late first to, in the first sort of 8 to 10 picks in the second round, unless there's injury stuff that we don't know about. Overall, played in Arizona, not a huge program in the college football landscape, but they're sort of middle of the road. Haven't done much over the last few years, but ultimately has protected Jaden Daniels in his career before he moved across to LSU. So he's got experience doing that with. He's got experience.
Well, that's our hour and a half draft special just before the 2024 NFL draft takes place. It's probably it will be our last video before the draft takes place. So if anyone has any opinions on what we've said, I'm sure there'll be lots of opinions on what we've said. Maybe my 32 pick, maybe some of the trades, maybe Dave for getting Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins run the Titans. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this video, Punts and Puntesses. Thank you for watching. We've really enjoyed doing it. We'll enjoy the draft, and we'll see you next time.